Hey there, Alex Kidman here, and today I'm taking a look at this, the MacBook Air M3. And look, I've got a long history with the MacBook Air line. I'm one of the few people still working in tech journalism who can say, yeah, look, I was actually physically in the room when Steve Jobs did the whole taking it out of an envelope thing, and at that point, it was a luxury buy. Absolutely in their line, it was a luxury buy. These days, it's the everyday Mac to an extent. It's Apple's lowest cost Mac, although the M3 version of the Air isn't actually Apple's lowest cost MacBook. That's the M2, and I'll get to that in a minute. I like this laptop a lot. I think it's a really good premium option in a lot of ways, but it's one that I think you do have to think about carefully before deciding if it's the right MacBook for you. Before we get into the full review, I've got to apologise. My voice is a little bit hoarse today. They're doing a whole bunch of burn-offs just near here, so the air is full of wood smoke. Believe me, it's kind of rough around here, so apologies if the audio is not quite as good as it should be. But let's get into it. In design terms, what's changed? Well, put simply, nothing. Just nothing. I mean, really nothing. And look, I can prove this because, look, here's the MacBook Air M3. And here's the MacBook Air M2. Which one is which? Which could it be? They are exactly the same design. And of course, these are both the midnight color variants, although if you want silver or starlight or space gray, they all both still exist. You can get them in 13-inch or 15-inch sizes. The screen specs are the same, the keyboards are the same, the trackpads are the same, even the ports are the same. Now, on the port side, I have a complaint to make here in terms of the design, although this is not a new complaint by any stretch of the imagination. So what's my problem? Well, I've got many of those, I think we all know that. But in this case, it's the fact that for the Air models, Apple throws MagSafe and dual Thunderbolt 3 on the left-hand side, and then just a single headphone jack on the right-hand side. And my issue with that is that putting both of the USB ports right next to each other does not give you a lot of space. If you have USB devices with thicker cables or thicker ends, or you're using adapters, it can get quite crowded. It can get quite tricky to actually get some devices to connect up nicely. Not everything, but plenty of things can be a problem that way. And this would be the easiest thing in the world to solve by throwing just one of those ports around to the right-hand side. It would also add the benefit that because this laptop can charge over USB, you could charge it from either side. You wouldn't need to fuss about which way down you put it on a desk if you had it flat and closed with a monitor. And yeah, that's a thing I do all the time. But they don't. And I mean, Apple's response to that would be, oh, if you want ports on both sides, you've got to buy a MacBook Pro. And of course, you've got to spend more money on a MacBook Pro. That annoys me. I mean, the fact that they do it with the MacBook Pro shows that it's totally feasible to do. They just choose not to push that kind of upsell. That's something that I'll return to in a little while too. But look, overall, while I don't like that port placement, I can live with it. And this is a solid, proven industrial design. It's nice. It works well. The screen is decent, whilst not being Apple's highest spec, of course. Again, if you want that, you've got to buy the Pro. It's a good little workhorse machine in terms of its design. It's even the same weight as the M2, which is nice when you consider that this is an ultra-portable device, or it was originally envisaged as an ultra-portable device. That super, super thin shape is now gone. This is just quite flat and rectangular on the sides, but it's still a nicely carryable device, especially in that 13-inch size, which I personally do favour. If you're a big fan of the 15-inch, let me know why I'm wrong below. So, of course, the story of the MacBook Air M3 is one of performance. This is bumping up to the M3 chip, although unlike the MacBook Pro M3, which I've already reviewed, you don't get a choice then of processor upgrade options to speak of in terms of the M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max. If you want the Pro or the Max, those are still MacBook Pro only choices. Instead, you just get the base level M3. There are some choices around CPU and GPU configurations, but you don't get Pro or Max at all. And this creates some interesting counterpoints. Now, I have benchmark tested this against the M3 Pro Max that I've already had in and already tested, as well as against the M2. Those full benchmarks are in my written review, which I would recommend you go read if you're into your benchmarks, if you want to look at full comparatives. They don't present all that well on YouTube. So I'm instead going to talk through some of what I've seen and some of where this impresses and some of where it doesn't. So, first of all, Against the M3 Max, of course, the M3 Max absolutely annihilates this thing in terms of raw processing power and GPU and so on. It absolutely should do. It's so much more expensive. I mean, the M3 Max upgrade itself is more expensive than some of the baseline versions of this device. That absolutely should be the case. The Pro devices are for the Pro people. Where it's interesting, though, is, of course, you can get the baseline M3 in a Pro form factor. And if you didn't need those additional ports, I'm going to say I think this is probably the smarter buy. It's, for most people, plenty of power. The only thing you really miss out on there, apart from the ports, is internal fans. So if you were going to be pushing it really hard on a very consistent basis, then the Pro might be a smart buy. But otherwise, I'd probably, for most people, for people who are not doing lots of video editing or photo editing, where the screen also might be a factor, I'd say go for the Air. It's a better buy and you're saving a bit of money. And saving a bit of money is always a good idea when you're talking Apple. What about with other Airs, though? So this very much depends on where you're coming from. So against things like the M1 or even the older Intel MacBook Airs, yeah, this is a much more powerful machine. The jump there is remarkable. And I think that's the sensible upgrade path too. If you're talking a MacBook that's 2, 3 or more years old and that is on its last legs, I would still say try and run these machines as long as you can, because that's both environmentally sound and it's friendlier for your wallet. But if you are in that upgrade space right now, you will find the jump up to the M3 incredibly pleasing. It will really feel like a whole new world because it is just that much more powerful. The bump from the M2, though, is significantly less pronounced, even over the M1. And that's interesting because Apple has kept the MacBook Air M2 13-inch in its lineup. You can't get the 15-inch from Apple anymore. You might be able to find one of those from a reseller somewhere, but you'll probably pay too much for it, frankly. But it's kept the M2 model and at a discount. So here in Australia, the MacBook Air M3 starts at $17.99, but the M2 model is $15.99. $200 saving. That's not nothing, I've got to say. Now, I should also say that the model that Apple actually sent me for review is not that $17.99 baseline model. They sent me a model with 16 gig of RAM, an 8-core CPU and a 10-core GPU with a 1TB hard drive. If you want to configure that, it'd run you $2,699, quite a bit more. But that's always the way with Apple. And this is a good time to bring up the fact that if you are looking at a MacBook, you really do need to remember you cannot upgrade these things internally. You can't bump up the RAM, you can't bump up the internal storage. Whatever they've got, when you configure them, when you buy them, that's all they're ever going to have. You can string an additional external hard drive off the USB if you must, but you can't upgrade the storage and you just can't upgrade the RAM at all. You can't change out the processor. These are very much fixed machines. So buy what you need and what you think you're going to need for the life of the machine. Still, that comparison with the M2 sits with me because I own a MacBook Air M2. It's pretty much my day-to-day working machine because it was sitting in the right affordable price point when I needed to upgrade my Mac. And the thing there is, while this is faster for tasks like, for example, video editing, it's not that much faster. I mean, the Pro is so much faster. I've got that as a loaner for Apple at the moment, and certainly I'm doing a lot of my editing there because why wouldn't you? But the difference between the M3 Air and the M2 Air, not quite so great. And the thing with the M2 Air is it's a nicely powerful machine for everyday computing needs. So if you're doing like document creation or spreadsheets or lots of web research, maybe watching a little video here and there, the M2 is more than enough. That might be the machine that you should buy. There is, of course, one other difference, and it's an interesting thing for Apple to add, although it does annoy me. And what is that difference, I hear you ask? Dual monitor support. Now, dual monitor support is something you could previously only get with a MacBook Pro. Apple's contention was, oh no, the Airs cannot handle it. The power just isn't there to run multiple monitors. And that always felt like a very sketchy kind of reasoning on Apple's part to me. Turns out it was, because the M3 MacBook Air can do dual monitors. It's natively supported. There are, of course, third-party workarounds for the older Apple Silicon MacBook Air models. And the fact that Apple's chosen to put it in here is really interesting. Obviously, if you need it, great. You can have it on an Air. You can have it on an Air a bit cheaper than the equivalent Pro model. Maybe that doesn't matter to you at all. It irks me, though, because it has always felt like that slightly false equivalence, that upsell to get you to buy the Pro model if you needed multi-monitor support. It certainly works. I've tested it. It's fine. If multi-monitor is your thing, it's not mine, but everyone's workflow is a little different these days. But I kind of wish that they'd just been honest up front and said, yeah, look, you can do it on these as well, maybe even retrofit it. Again, Apple's not going to do that, of course. They're not particularly going to listen to me, but would have been nice to see. As it is, it's, I suppose, a selling point if it's very, very important to you. What about battery life? Well, look, I've tested this now for a little bit over a week as my mostly day-to-day machine. That's not a ton of testing time, but what I've seen so far has been both predictable and pleasing. So on the pleasing side, it's running a more powerful processor, and typically that means your battery life is going to drop. And it didn't. Compared to what I get out of the M2 Air, the M3 Air delivers about the same. I mean, Apple's official figures are for, I think it's up to 18 hours of video and 15 hours of wireless web. That's an up to figure, of course. Those are always a little bit rubbery. But certainly, all working day battery life, yeah, that's totally within its remit. Obviously, if you do a huge chunk of video editing or gaming or high processor intensity tasks, you will run the battery down a bit faster. But for everyday stuff, yeah, you could stay off the charger for most of a working day or all of a working day for most people, I feel. On the charger front, you get a MagSafe compatible charger in the box. On the entry-level M3, it's just a 30-watt charger. For the 10-core models, like the one I've got, it's a 35-watt model with a USB-C socket inbuilt for charging other devices, such as the recent generation of iPhones, iPads, or, well, actually an awful lot of things these days. There's also an option for a 70-watt straight charger if you need to juice up the MacBook Air M3 rapidly. The trick here is to pick what you want when you're buying, if you're buying direct from Apple. If you're buying from a reseller, they'll just have whatever's in the box, of course. You can configure the baseline models with the 35-watt charger if you wish. That'll cost you $30 over the price of the regular charger. That's also what you'd pay as an upgrade for the 70-watt model, which doesn't come standard in any box. Now, the thing here is if you decided after that, oh, actually I did want the other one, it's going to cost you quite a bit more. Here in Australia, the 35-watt or the 70-watt model will run you $89 each as a standalone item. So should you buy the MacBook Air M3? Well, look, it's an impressive machine. It's powerful, it's quiet because there's no fans, it runs really well in terms of battery life. I generally like the physical design, those ports notwithstanding. It's a decent value machine within its bracket, within that semi-premium bracket that Apple occupies. It doesn't do cheap MacBooks the way you can get cheap Windows laptops. But I think there are some challenges to its value. The M2 especially. I think for a lot of people, the M2 Air is the value pick right now. It's enough laptop for you, for most people. And the $200 saving is not inconsequential when you consider it's fairly rare here in Australia to see Apple gear on significant special. Obviously, if you can get a special, go for it. Run towards it screaming. But you don't often see it, and $200 is $200. It's $200 in your pocket for a machine which is substantially as powerful as the M3. It doesn't mean that the Air M3 is a bad machine, far from it. I just think the M2 is a better value option for most buyers. That being said, of course, the Air M3, I think, is probably a better value proposition for most buyers than the baseline M3 Pro, unless you need those extra ports or the screen. So there's a bit of a balancing act at play here. This is a really good laptop. I like it quite a lot, but I think for most people, it's maybe not the model you should opt for. Anyway, that's my take on the MacBook Air M3. What do you think? Is there anything you'd like to know? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe.